That's an amazing story. One thing, so sort of as I sort of interview people as well, I sort of realize whether it was Mariana, whether it was Viviano, ending up at those firms wherever they ended up at, it was sort of them taking that leap and taking that chance.
I'll tell you a story. I went to Jaipur. We were looking at a project in Mumbai to redevelop Dharavi, one of the largest slums or informal settlements in Asia, I guess. As part of that project, we thought we must go to Jaipur and see how the city was planned and constructed, or little sketches and diagrams. Everything is a kind of a conversational piece. And so sometimes these kind of drawings are done without thinking, and I think that's the kind of zone you need to get yourself into.
Hey yo guys, welcome to this Patreon exclusive of the interview with Narinder Sagoo. I hope you've seen the YouTube video. If you've not, I would recommend go watch that first, and then you can continue watching this one. I hope you like it, and let's pick up our conversation with Narinder Sagoo once again.
So, speaking of drawing, a lot of especially young architects are now moving away from drawing by hand and moving towards a more computational approach towards design, where things are now done with the help of computers and algorithms. At school, I can especially speak from my experience. A lot of especially people from the older generation told us to keep drawing, to never lose touch with that art. So, keeping the current scenario in mind, what importance does drawing and sketching hold when it comes to design and its communication?
Everyone has their own opinion, but really we kind of point towards the same thing, that for us, drawing's really like a language, and we all speak in different ways. We speak in different languages, but really we can connect through a singular language, for me, which I think is drawing. Regardless of whether we understand the verbal language, I think drawing's really a universal, all-inclusive platform to talk to one another, and it always has been in history. For me, and we all speak in different ways, and we have our different nuances. I think the pencil or the pen holds our personality. We can talk in the most innocent way through the pencil or the pen. I think we can be very naive. We can ask questions before we propose answers. We can miss things out, miss out detail, leave things to the imagination that really the computer tends not to allow us to do. It's the computer way of drawing. And I think drawing really encompasses everything from analog to digital. The computer does ask many more questions and doesn't allow you perhaps to leave out the spaces for your imagination to fill. Having said that, as a team, we've developed so many different tools now. So we're drawing by hand in sketchbooks like this that I have on my desk right now. We draw on the iPad with the Apple Pencil. We can paint and draw simultaneously on the iPad. And then those same sketches and those same thoughts, through the process of design and through conversations, become more and more refined. So a simple sketch from a simple storyboard might become a more detailed drawing. A more detailed drawing might become a piece of concept art, which is a painting that adds layers of emotion and atmosphere and of course feeling to the sketch. And then once we've defined that, once we've defined storytelling, once we've defined atmosphere and feeling, we can then tell the computer or push it into a process that's far more defined, where we're modeling and rendering and lighting space and produce things which are photorealistic. And even then, the important component for us is the storytelling and the atmosphere and the lighting and the romanticism within space that really originally came from the sketch. So for us, drawing is everything. Drawing, we don't separate analog from digital. And even when we're fully submersed within the digital, we can very quickly pull it back into a sketch and rethink what we're trying to say. So as a practice, I think, and as a team, we're kind of most proud of that combination of all those skills, I think, where there's no right or wrong. You know, whether we choose ink, pencil, graphite, or a digital pencil or a mouse, it's all drawing for us, and we can switch back and forth whenever we please. I do have to say, I think as students, we mustn't make that choice. We mustn't be forced to make the choice between analog and digital. I think we should just go with the flow and see what feels right. And if you are in your kind of in your project work kind of really submersed within a team that's embraced by digital platforms, of course, which nowadays allow us to work globally on the same piece of design simultaneously, you must still sketch. I think you must still express yourself through the pen and through the pencil. You must practice, you must observe. Through the computer, perhaps we could have a shared lens, which is very, very useful, but it's very important for us to have a personal lens in which we see the world and in the way we think. And as architects, I think to be able to do both, to be able to work as a team through the platforms that are available, but also kind of retreat to work in our personal zone, is incredibly important for our creative health. Where in India are you, by the way?
Jaipur.
Are you? Amazing.
Yeah.
No way, really?
So I've been born and brought up here. I work in Gurgaon, but because of the pandemic, I'd sort of shifted back. So since the past 8 months, I've been in Jaipur again. But this is where I've sort of grown up.
I'll tell you a story. I went to Jaipur. We were looking at a project in Mumbai to redevelop Dharavi, you know, one of the largest slums or informal settlements in Asia, I guess. And as part of that project, we thought we must go to Jaipur and see how the city was planned and constructed. And it was a life-changing experience, really. I spent 4 days in Dharavi, in Mumbai, just every day, just spending time with people and learning about the way they live and learning about how the settlements have developed. And then I flew to Jaipur and spent 2 or 3 days there learning about how the city was constructed. It was just incredibly beautiful place, but also as a journey, and the contrast between the two places was really amazing. And then my daughter, who's called Amber, was named after Amber Fort. And so I have sketches from Jaipur, which were study sketches and site sketches. And on one of those sketches somewhere, I'd written down, Amber as in, in its relationship to Jaipur. And that was how I chose my daughter's name.
That's pretty cool.
I'm very jealous that you're there.
For a long time, I did not recognize the everything that Jaipur has, and it was only after I started studying architecture, and then also when I started traveling is when I realized that there is so much that Jaipur also has to offer, and that people come from all over the world to sort of see the things that there are in Jaipur. So I sort of recently started going back to a lot of things in Jaipur as well.
Well, what a wonderful city to live in. It's amazing.
So this next part that is going to come up is a continuation from when Narinder was telling us how he got into Foster Plus Partners. He told us how he took the chance and finally got a job there. And that is right where this conversation picks up.
That's an amazing story. One thing, so sort of as I sort of interview people as well, I sort of realized whether it was Mariana, whether it was Viviano, ending up at those firms wherever they ended up at, it was sort of them taking that leap and taking that chance and just maybe putting themselves out there and sort of trying to reach out, and all of them then got the job through that. So I think that is one thing. So because whenever we think about bigger firms, it is always a bit intimidating, I think. Like maybe I just won't get a job, or they have the best of the people applying to that firm, so maybe I won't even try. And I think one thing through all the interviews that I got was, it was taking that chance that actually got them there.
I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the constant state is always that people are there to encourage you, and they wish you well, and particularly your teachers, your friends, family. But there are always people there who will discourage you. There will always be people there who will say, "You can't do it." Why would you be given that opportunity? Why you? And that's just natural in any field, really. Architecture is a very competitive world. From the moment we start studying to, all our days within practice, it's a huge amount of competition. And without that competition, in a way, we wouldn't have the energy that we require to create, to better ourselves as a team. But what I've always found is that even from being a child, where I was encouraged to draw by my grandmother, but there was also a few people who would tell me to stop drawing because they said, "You'll never make any money, you'll never find a career in drawing, you need to study something proper," they would say. And maybe it's a cultural thing, maybe it's in our Indian families, the arts are not necessarily seen as something that can give you a profession where you can earn money. And for our families, it was more about earning money than it was making a difference. And for me, very early on, it was about making a difference. But anyway, I think I've learned from those earliest years and then through the years of education that there's always competition. There are always people who will tell you can't do it, or you're making a wrong decision, just to change your path. And the skill is really to harness that energy in the same way that you do when somebody encourages you to do something, for you to take that kind of negative energy and use it to push you even further. So if somebody says you can't do it, you just have to prove them that you can. And what I've learned in kind of 25 years that I've been with Norman is that continues, and you have to kind of be just as competitive and harness that energy into creativity as a practice, as a team, but continually as an individual as well. Looking for encouragement, looking to inspire, surround yourself with people that inspire you. But if you do get any challenges, if somebody does say that it's not possible, but to be able to harness that energy and let it move you forward regardless. So in terms of career progression, of course, if often one thinks that age is a progression, and that the older you get, the more senior you get, the more senior you are, the more important you are within a practice or within an organization. Actually, none of that matters at all. It's to do with, I think, creativity, it's to do with your energy, it's to do with your personality, it's to do with your belief system, which is regardless of age. But within that kind of the old-fashioned mechanisms, of course, within practice, you do get that competitiveness, So I think achieving any kind of position at any age is possible for anyone, really, if you learn to kind of harness that energy.
A lot of people do text me asking for ways to improve their sketching and drawing skills. Could you give us some tricks or advice that can help people get better?
Yeah, I think to surround yourself with as many tools as you possibly can. I think some architects tend to find one pen that looks great and looks good in their top pocket, and they force themselves to draw with that all the time. But really, you should choose whatever you can surround yourself with. I tend to do that all the time. I have kind of brushes, pencils, pens, inks. The cheapest of pens I've used for many, many years to produce drawings that have huge amount of value to me. So it's not really about finding the most expensive tool. My advice is always to use the right tool at the right time for the right conversation. So a fast flowing ink pen like this allows me to draw very, very quickly I can think very quickly with this. The ink flows, there's no restriction whatsoever, and I can draw quite rigorously with it wherever I am. So I always carry a pen like this, but I could also use something like this pen, which is a 0.1 fiber tip pen, and if I drew too quickly with this, the nib would break, right? So it controls it controls the speed at which I think. It controls the speed at which I draw. Likewise, this does allows me to draw fast. This makes me draw slow. So I choose the right tool for the right kind of conversation in my mind, and I choose the right tool for the right kind of drawing. So, these sketchbooks, which are kind of my personal sketchbooks that I've been doing during the lockdown here in London, are done with the ink pen, and then the drawing behind me, and there's a drawing over here as well, which are larger scale, more considered, slower conversations, are done exactly with this pen here, this 0.1 fiber tip. So I think choosing the right tool is the most important thing. Then, of course, don't be too precious with drawing. You should be able to, the more precious you are, the more frightened you become of putting the pen to paper. And really, I think if you draw all the time and you're practicing all the time, making marks, turning the page, carrying on, finding virtue in every line, I think it's important that we learn that there's no mistakes in drawing. There's no such thing as a line that could have gone wrong. Everything's intentional. And in a funny way, just as when we're children and we look up at the clouds and find shapes and faces and dinosaurs and cities. I remember when I was a kid, I used to look at the cracks in the walls of our bathroom and see different faces and things all the time. For me, drawing's exactly the same. You just have to make marks with such confidence that often you don't really know what you're drawing until you've put the pen to the paper. And it's quite magical. I mean, if I knew what I was drawing and exactly what the drawing was going to look like before I started, I would be pretty bored straight away. I really, really enjoy the moment of discovery where you just watch the pen and just watch what happens. And if it's not right, you just carry on and carry on and carry on, and you discover quite beautiful things. Finding virtue in your mistakes is very, very important. Creating the right environment around you is super important. You don't have to draw at a desk or a drawing board, but you could go anywhere you like. And so sometimes I carry little sketchbooks that fit in my pocket, and sometimes I'll sit at a drawing board and draw on a larger piece of paper. But you can draw in different environments, but surround yourself with things that inspire you. And I think, for me, sometimes if I have a very short amount of time to draw and there's a huge amount of pressure on me to do something within a short amount of time, if I have half an hour or 1 hour to produce a drawing for a client, I will sometimes put on music that will really, really calm me down. And so I will listen to classical music. I love listening to Indian classical music. I love listening to kind of Western fusion of Indian music for people like Talvin Singh. We'll have a double beat to the music that I kind of draw to the same beat, for example. So I use the rhythm of music to change the rhythm of drawing, and I use the kind of music to either relax me so I can calmly draw, regardless of the pressure. But sometimes if I'm not feeling the pressure enough, I might kind of crank it up to some AC/DC or Metallica or something that energizes me to draw quicker and produce quicker. So I think that's your tools are really important. Your canvas is really important. Learning to be at one with the line work and never thinking of any line as a mistake is super important. But perhaps the most important of all is to have people around you that inspire you. I find if I'm kind of having a bit of a drawing block, which rarely happens, what I tend to do is draw in conversation. So I will draw whilst talking to somebody, or draw side by side with somebody. And that's often when I produce, I think, my favourite drawings, because every line that I'm producing is conversational. Every touch of the paper is part of a dialogue, part of a two-way conversation. And so my drawings are never really laboured. They're not just drawing for drawing's sake, but everything I'm drawing is saying something. Whether it's the line work itself, or it's the shading, or even annotation and writing, or little sketches and diagrams. Everything is a kind of a conversational piece. And so sometimes these kind of drawings are, are done without thinking, and I think that's the kind of zone you need to get yourself into.
I think that's, especially I really love that music part of the advice. I think that the music can really affect, what's going on in your head. It has an effect. It can calm you down. It can energize you up. So I think that was one of the great advice. For your ink pen advice, when I was younger, and that is why I don't use ink pens, I have a habit. I usually don't sit still. So if I have a pen in my hand, I would just keep doing this, or the pen would be in my mouth, or the pen would be moving constantly. And it happened that once I was in school and the cap was off, it was an ink pen in my hand, and I was doing this. And I later realized, my friends were like, dude, and I later realized the ink had been spraying outside, be going on them, going everywhere. So since then I try not to use ink pens. But yeah, they are really free flowing. So I think that to people who love to sketch, I think they work out really well because it's so easy.
Yeah. So easy. Well, they're really, I mean, just last week we got so many different talents within my team. But I was talking to one of my colleagues, and he was using ink, and it inspired me to buy these as well, these water brushes, where you can just draw with ink, and then with a water brush just move the ink around and spread it wherever you can. And again, it kind of allows you it gives you that confidence to be able to not be too precious about the drawing itself. So if your ink's spreading around, if you smudge it with your hand, or it lands on your friend's book, it's kind of all a good thing. I think that's a wonderful thing about ink. Pencil becomes perhaps a little bit more precise, but again, you can smudge and you can move and kind of discover wonderful things in the process.
And that was it, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. There are many more coming your way, so stay tuned for those. That is it for this week. I will see you guys soon with another video. Bye bye.